booktubers, my name is Lauren, you're watching Dreams, Books, Courage, and today I'm going to be doing a different type of video. This one's going to be more of a discussion video between all of us. I would love to hear all of your thoughts down below in the comments. And I did a video sort of like this a few months earlier, and that video was over why classics are important, so I will be leaving a link to that one down below if you have not watched that yet. And so this video is going to be all about why popular reads are important. I'm sure that all of you have heard of all four of these books behind me, and most of you have read most, if not all, of these books. Some of you might have even been in fandoms over these stories, and you might even still be in those fandoms, but either way, these books have affected us whether we like it or not. And these books might even be the reason why you started reading and why you got into booktube and things like that. So today we're going to be talking about those different facets of these books, so let's go ahead and get into it. First, let's start with a series that all of us know and love, and that series of course is The Wizarding World of Harry Potter by J.K. Rowling. It's probably odd in our society for someone to not have read this book, and it's very rare for you to find someone who actually hasn't read this series yet, or at least the first book, because the series has been so prevalent in our society. Personally, I read this series around like 4th or 5th grade, and of course I just fell in love with this story and these characters. I actually had a book club when I was younger with my friends, and we read most of the books in this series together, and that was a really fun experience. But personally, I was very late in the fandom to actually realize what was happening. I'm pretty sure that this book actually came out in the year that I was born, so obviously I really didn't grow up with this series. Although I really did love it by the time that I read this series. There were only like 2 movies left to be released, so I was very late on this, and so I didn't really get into the fandom or anything. Although I love this series and these characters, it didn't really personally affect me very much. But then of course we have how this series has affected the world and how it continues to affect the world, because a lot of people have read these books and they have fallen in love with it, and then they fell in love with reading, which is completely amazing that just one series can make you fall in love with all books and make you want to read even more and more books. But this is definitely a very special series that gets a lot of people into reading, and this series is very important because it is classified more as a middle grade series, and that is not even young adult, so obviously these books are kind of set up for a younger age group, but that's really the age in which kids decide whether they want to read or not. And that's how people become readers for the rest of their lives. So I think this is a very important series if you have children, to like get them to read this series, because it's amazing how there are books and movies. So if your child is having trouble visualizing the books, they can always watch the movies first. Or even if the children really love the movies, it'll get them to start reading these books, which is just an amazing thing. And even for our readers that are my age or even older than that, the series can really spark anyone into reading. I will definitely be rereading the series for the rest of my life because it is just that amazing, and I think it's that way for a lot of people. Maybe it's just because most people read the series at a young age, but honestly I've never heard anyone say that they don't like Harry Potter. And in some places this book is banned. Like, I've heard my friends say that their parents wouldn't let them read it as children, and I think that's crazy, as if witchcraft in this book would really make you go against God or something like that. I think that's just a crazy notion, and I think that could possibly stop your child from wanting to read for the rest of their life, because of course that age is a very delicate time in which your children really decide whether they love reading or whether they don't like it at all. And I think this really is the perfect series to give to a child. Even if they stop reading as they get older, they'll probably get back into it, because as a child they were instilled that reading was a good thing. And I think it's amazing that this book is so international and it has just affected people across the globe. And I know the series is very important in a lot of booktubers' lives, but also just people in general. So there's definitely a reason why everyone loves this series. Next, we have a series that people tend to have very mixed feelings over, and that is the Twilight Saga by Stephanie Meyer. To be honest with you guys, I've only read 3 out of 4 of these books, but the ones that I did read I really did enjoy. And yes, these books might not have really underlying themes, and this book might not have a lot of depth in general, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's not worth reading. I know for a lot of booktubers, especially whenever they got into high school, they started reading the series, and that's what got them back into reading as teenagers. And so of course I don't think that could be discounted, and I think it's very important that this series came about. I was pretty young whenever the first Twilight movie came out, and that's kind of whenever a lot of buzz about this series started. I think I was about in 6th or 7th grade. And so this series didn't really affect me as much. But again, I read the first 3 books and I did enjoy them. And I do feel like that propelled me a little bit while I was in junior high to read other books. And honestly, this book is no small feat. It is actually a pretty big novel. And so I think that also instills a lot of confidence in readers that they can read books this big and that they don't necessarily have to read just tiny books. They can really explore other genres and bigger books. And I think the series really affected a lot of people internationally. And also this book is very important because it inspired an entire genre of books. New adult novels originally came out because of the Twilight saga, and they were originally pieces of fan fiction and they just kind of changed the names and the stories a little bit and then they published them. So Twilight literally crafted an entire genre, and a lot of people are really getting into new adult and it's kind of a new thing right now. But that's amazing that just one series can create this entire genre. And so now, especially for people who are in their late teens or they're in their 20s, they have an entire genre dedicated to them all because of this series. And now for a series that I feel like I have been a part of, and that is the Hunger Games trilogy by Suzanne Collins. And I didn't really read these novels as they came out, although I do remember whenever this one came out. The synopsis of it just sounded very odd, but also very intriguing. But I never really thought to pick these books up until I heard about the Hunger Games movie coming out. And so I think I was like in 8th grade whenever I actually did pick up the series. But I absolutely love this series, and I feel like this is one that more people my age have picked up, and why they read is because of this series. This is a very unique trilogy to me because I have read all 3 books twice and I plan on reading them for a 3rd time later this year. Again, this is a series that I feel like has inspired a lot of other people to create books that are kind of like it, which would be, of course, young adult dystopian trilogies. And of course, I know a lot of us are tired of hearing of them, but it is very good that there are more books because of this trilogy. And I feel like this trilogy has kind of influenced the world in a political way. Like in one country, I can't remember which one it was, but they actually did the Hunger Games sign in like a sign of peaceful rebellion. So that's just incredible that this book has influenced people that much. And I feel like it's also opened a lot of people's eyes to worlds that already exist, like in North Korea, where the country is controlled by a dictatorship and they live lives kind of like this. People are being oppressed all over the world daily, and yet a lot of times we don't even really realize that. But hopefully this book has opened a lot of people's eyes to that sort of oppression, and also to the fact that although we are young, we can rebel and things can change. And so I think that shows a very powerful statement for young adults and people all over the world. And last but not least, we have a book that inspired a fandom that kind of feels like it was a bit short-lived, but that novel is The Fault in Our Stars by John Green. And this book has personally affected me in a lot of ways. And this book is actually the reason why I have a booktube channel and why I love reading so much. I was so inspired after I picked this one up, and it just brought me to this whole new world of reading, and I definitely wouldn't be such a voracious reader if it wasn't for this novel. If you want to hear more about my thoughts and memories of this book, then I will be leaving a link down below to my book discussion over it. But honestly, this book has affected me in so many ways, and that's why this book is my favorite book of all time. And I know it's affected a lot of you as well, but this book is just a perfect combination to me of like an inspiring read, but also a very realistic one. I felt like at the time of this book's publishing, there weren't very many cancer books out there or books dealing with sickness, especially within a young adult setting. But this book definitely covered the topic head on, and John Green really knew what he was talking about whenever he wrote this book. And now it seems like the young adult genre is just littered with a bunch of books about teenagers dealing with cancer. And I know it's kind of a little bit overwhelming, but also I think that is a positive thing. As teenagers, we don't necessarily have to think about oblivion or sickness, but a lot of us have dealt with things like this in our lives. And so I think it's very important that books out there like this one exist and that we pick them up. This book is a very rare popular read because although it is popular and it might have a bit of insta love in it, it also has a very important message, and it also deals with the topic of death, which wasn't dealt with very often before this book was published. And of course we have the overlying message of why all these books and all these popular books in general matter so much to us, and that is because they make more people read and they make more people find things like booktube. And although some readers' reading experience might start out with a book like 50 Shades of Grey, it could lead them to be much more empathetic as readers and as human beings, because maybe reading that one book will lead you to another book and another book, and then you're reading The Kite Runner and other very important reads that really teach you these dark lessons, but things that you really need to know. Personally, I feel like every book is important and it has something to teach us, but I feel like these 4 four reads have definitely affected a lot of us. And if you kind of want to hear about the other side of popular reads and how they affect us in society, I'm going to be linking a video by Ariel Bassett down below, which I thought was such a brilliant video. And also a video that John Green actually did on Crash Course, which is over how and why we read. I definitely recommend that you check out both of these videos because I feel like they're both important in their own way. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I would love to hear what your thoughts are on popular reads in general, and also how these 4 books have personally affected you. I'll see you guys next time. I'm gonna go get back to reading.